Welcome to another chapter of The Mouse and the Motorcycle. Let me see if I can share my screen on this one so that we can see it. Looks good over here. So friends, yesterday when we were reading, we found out that Ralph the mouse, he was really excited about what? Do you remember? That motorcycle, and he got to ride it. And then what happened? Do you remember what happened? How did he get stuck in the handle? Alina, what happened?
So he was trying to move it down, but it was so sweet that he couldn't let it break, and then he fell in the trash can.
Yes. Do you remember what happened though? What happened that startled him, that helped made him like kind of lose his concentration, I guess, Henry? Yes, it was that phone ringing, and we talked about that, and it startled him. And he fell. He got stressed out and he fell. And this chapter is called Trapped. And there is Ralph at the bottom of the wastebasket. So let's listen to see what happens next. Even though Ralph woke up feeling sick and dizzy, his first thought was of the motorcycle. Oh, he hoped it was not broken. He sat there at the bottom of the wastebasket until the whirly feeling in his head stopped and he was able slowly and carefully to stand up. Excuse me. He stretched each aching muscle and felt each of his four legs to make certain it was not broken. When Ralph was sure that he was battered, but in fact, when Ralph was sure that he was battered but intact, he examined the motorcycle. He set it upright and rolled it backward and forward to make sure that the wheels still worked. One handlebar was bent and some of the paint was chipped off the rear fender, but everything else seemed all right. Ralph hoped so, but there was no way he could find out until he figured out how to start the engine. Oh, now he ached too much to even try. Wearily, Ralph dragged himself over to the wall of his metal prison and sat down beside the apple cord to rest his aching body. He leaned back against the side of the wastebasket, closed his eyes, and thought about his Uncle Victor. Poor, nearsighted Uncle Victor. He too had landed in a metal waste paper basket, jumping there quite by mistake. Unable to climb the sides, he had been trapped until the maid came and emptied him out into the trash. No one knew for sure what had happened to Uncle Victor, but it was known that trash in the hotel was emptied into an incinerator. Does anyone know what an incinerator is? What do you think, Finley? What do you think an incinerator is?
Good morning, Molly. At this time, please put the cycle in your home. Thank you.
Yes, sometimes we read things from other books and we make that connection. Friends who are listening, we had a couple guesses of what an incinerator was. And some people thought it was like the garbage truck. And we found out because Helena had read another book where there was an incinerator in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. An incinerator actually burns garbage, sets it on fire. So let's see what happens next. Ralph felt sad and remorseful thinking about his Uncle Victor getting dumped out with the trash. His mother had been right after all. Oh, his poor mother, gathering crumbs for his little brothers and sisters while he, selfish mouse that he was, sat trapped in the metal prison from which the only escape was to be thrown away like an old gum wrapper. Ralph thought sadly of his uncomfortable home in the mouse hole. It wasn't about his comfortable home in the mouse hole, pardon me. It was a good home, untidy, but comfortable. The children who stayed in room 215 usually left a good supply of crumbs behind. And there was always warm water from shirts hung to drip dry beside the wash basin. Do you remember what the wash basin was, guys, from last time? The sink, good job. It should have been enough. He should have been content to stay home without venturing out into the world looking for speed and excitement. Outside in the hall, Ralph heard footsteps and Matt, the bellboy, saying, "These new people in 215 and 216, somehow they got the idea there were mice in the hotel. I just opened the window and told them the management wouldn't stand for it. Ralph heard a delightful laugh from the second floor maid, a college girl who was working for the summer season. Mice are adorable, but just the same, I hope I never find any in my rooms. I'm afraid of them. There were two kinds of employees at Mountain View Inn: the regulars, none of them young, and the summer help, who were college students working during the tourist season. You can just set it down. If you don't like mice, you better stay away from that knothole under the window in room 215, advised Matt. The sound of voices so close made Ralph more eager than ever to escape. No, he shouted, his voice echoing in the metal chamber. I won't have it. I'm too young to be dumped out in the trash. Oops, I went too far. In spite of his aches, he jumped to his feet, ran across the wastebasket floor, and leaped into the wall, only to fall back in a sorry heap. He rose, backed up, and tried again. What was he trying to do you think? He's trying to tip it over. I think you're right. There he was on the floor of the wastebaskets a second time. It was useless, utterly useless. He did not have the strength to tip over the wastebasket. Your predictions were absolutely right. Ralph was not a mouse to give up easily. He considered his problem a moment before he rolled the motorcycle over to the wall of the wastebasket. Then he seized the apple core by the stem and dragged it over to the motorcycle. By putting his shoulder under the stem end, he managed to raise the core until it was standing on its blossom end. But when he put his front paws around it and tried to lift it, he found he could not. The core was too heavy to lift up onto the seat of the motorcycle. Ralph was disappointed. But when he stopped to think it over, he saw that even if he could manage to get the apple core on top of the motorcycle, what's he doing that for, by the way, do you think?
To make it tall enough.
To make it tall. Yep, to make it tall enough so he can jump out. You guys are so smart. He saw that even if he could manage to get the apple core on top of the motorcycle, it still would be not high enough to allow him to climb out of the wastebasket. Bruised and defeated, Ralph dropped the core and decided that he might as well be thrown out with the trash on a full stomach as an empty one. So he took a bite of the apple and felt a little bit better. It was the best food he had eaten for several days, juicy and full of flavor, and much better than the damp Zwieback crumbs the last guest had left behind. Zwiebacks are like crackers, they're real dry. The babies sometimes eat them for the first time. He took several more bites and settled down to a hearty meal, saving the seeds for dessert. Two ant scouts appeared on the rim of the wastebasket. Go away, said Ralph crossly, because he did not like to eat food crawling with ants, because it embarrassed him to be seen in such a predicament. Now, it just said that he said it crossly. What does crossly mean? How's he feeling? What do you think, Gabriella? Yes, he's angry and mad. Yes, so when you hear someone say, I'm cross, that's what they're talking about. When Ralph had eaten his fill of the apple, he curled up beside the core. He only hoped that someone might happen to drop a Kleenex over him. It was bad enough to be carried to one's doom in a wastebasket, but be carried to one's doom by a shrieking maid? Oh, it was unthinkable. There was only one tiny ray of hope. If someone did happen to drop a Kleenex over him, he just might have a chance to jump and run when the maid tipped the basket to empty it into the incinerator. The thought that the boy was sure to miss his motorcycle and start looking for it kept Ralph tossing and turning behind the apple core until, stuffed and exhausted, he finally fell asleep. So has he escaped from that basket, boys and girls? He has not. He's still in there. This is what he was imagining. And our next chapter is called Keith. So I want you to be thinking, and I'm going to say this on the camera too. Think about what you think is going to happen. How is he going to get out of there? We're going to take some predictions and we'll see what happens next time.